Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Melissa Andrade. I'm the Marketing Director here at DataMite, and welcome to our webinar. I'm seeing a bunch of people still logging in here, so we're just going to wait about 3 more minutes until we get more people dialed in here, and we will get the webinar going. All right. Happy Friday, everyone. We are going to get going here. My name is Melissa Andrade. I'm the Marketing Director here at DataMite, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today for our webinar on the integration benefits of our Quality Planning Studio and DataMetrics SPC software platforms. We'll have about a 30 to 45-minute presentation given by Chris Ackerman, a solutions engineer here at DataMite. This will be followed by 15 minutes of time for any questions you may have. Vicki Peary, another one of DataMite's very talented solutions engineers, will join us at the end to assist us in sharing and answering these questions. So please send us any questions that you might have through the GoToWebinar control panel through the questions window. The audio for the participants is turned off, so utilize the questions or the chat feature as you need to. If you're having difficulties accessing the control panel, we've heard that on some computers you can access that through the Zoom feature at the middle of the top of the page. Otherwise, send us a message. If you'd like to set up time to talk with sales or a solutions expert after today's webinar, please indicate this via chat or the poll that we will be sending out. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris Ackerman to start. Chris?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's great to see so many familiar names. I want to have a special shout out there to Joe and Donna. Thanks for being such wonderful hosts this past week in New Hampshire. I'm so glad you could join me on this webinar as well. So glad to have everybody with us today. And what we're going to be talking about today is a new set of functionality between our Quality Planning Studio and our DataMetrics SPC software. And we're going to talk about this bi-directional integration between our two solutions and how this integration between our solutions will benefit you. So first of all, what I want to do is just kind of take a moment to talk a little bit about how the Quality Planning Studio is, because some of you on the webinar today are more familiar with our DataMetrics solution. And our Quality Planning Studio is based in APQP, and it's a manufacturing planning and control tool. In fact, many of you who are Quality Planning Studio users may remember the previous name was MPACT or PACT. So we want to welcome all of you as well that are already familiar with the planning and control tool. But this product is now integrating with our SPC tool, which is DataMetrics, and this is allowing us to create that documentation that we need as part of APQP. So our Quality Planning Studio allows you to manage and control the manufacturing processes, complying with many industry standards, not just automotive. That's where our primary focus is, but we have a number of users that are in aerospace, food and drug, etc. One area that we want to help you with is how you can identify those processes in which you can improve and get the highest quality of product possible, and bring that information into your documentation to be generated not only internally but then submitted to your customers as well. So that's a little bit about our QPS software. Again, previous name was PACT or MPACT. And so we welcome those of you who are users of that product. Then I also want to talk about our DataMetrics data collection and SPC product. And we have a number of you that are familiar with this product and have used it over the years. And you see here kind of the different configuration that we can bring to the table with our SPC solution with DataMetrics. So I know a number of you are using portable collectors, or you might have fixed station. You'll see there in the middle we have that setup editor, which is sort of the starting point of our inspection plan. We build the information there in that setup editor and then send that information out to either the fixed station or the mobile collectors. We might also be collecting information from third-party data collects. And then as that information is being absorbed into the DataMetrics database, we are able to generate reports in the analysis and reporting tool. So behind the scenes, we have that DataMetrics database. Behind the scenes of the Quality Planning Studio, we have a second database that is being used for the document generation of APQP. And what we're going to be doing today is talking about how we can have this integration taking place between both of these solutions and how we can have this information be of benefit to you. So I first want to talk a bit about the Quality Planning Studio next upgrade and the next webinar that we're going to be covering, because many of you that are involved with APQP and with our Quality Planning Studio, you've been anxiously awaiting our update to the new AIAG and VDA harmonization standard. We have completed that release. That will be our 8.4 release, so that is coming. We're not going to talk about that as much today in today's webinar, but we've got information on that coming soon. What we do want to talk about today is what problems or pain points that we can solve by our bi-directional integration between our quality planning solution and our SPC or DataMetrics solution. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk through the integration between the two solutions and show you the steps and have kind of a show of some of the software screens. and show you just how easy it is to do and perform this integration. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits of this integration and how it's going to be a benefit to the users. And then I've also left time at the end for questions, so we want to get to that as well. And if you have a good question along the way, please go ahead and submit that. Don't wait till the end of the talk to submit your question. We have the ability to receive those questions now as they come. So if you've got a really good question, please go ahead and ask it as we're going through the PowerPoint. So again, I wanted to talk about this because I know that many of you are asking about this. We've got a number of calls coming into tech support as to when we will have this new release. The release is now available, and coming up on January 24th, we are going to have an additional webinar that will focus just on our quality planning studio and the addressing of the AIAG-VDA harmonization standard. So many of you have been waiting several years not for necessarily us to release this, but for the AIAG to have that standard released. And they have now released it, and we have taken that standard and rolled that into our software, and we now have that available with our version 8.4. And like I mentioned, a webinar coming up in the end of January for that. So stay tuned for more information on that. What I do want to do is just give you a little bit of a teaser. This will be a 7-step approach, a 7-step process. There's going to be a couple of different formats that we're expanding for structure and function. You'll see, for instance, step 2 and step 3 are going to have expanded fields for the structure analysis and the function analysis. And what we're going to be able to do is, as we have in the past with all of our MPACT and PACT and Quality Planning Studio documents, we're going to give you that ability to toggle back and forth, or whichever columns you may need to generate a document. We're going to have a way for you to transition from the RPN, risk priority number method that we have been using in the past, and transition into that new action prioritization format. So like I said, it's coming. Look for that in an additional webinar that we're going to be doing in January. So here's just a reminder, once again, it's version 8.4, and the webinar is coming January 24th, where we will go into more detail with that particular version. So if you do have questions for that, we welcome the questions now. That will give us great information for us to use for that webinar in January. But we won't spend a lot of time at the end discussing that. We want to get into our topic of the day, and that is going to be this bi-directional integration that we have between our Quality Planning Studio and our SPC, our DataMetrics software. And one thing that this allows us to do is I mentioned earlier that we have the 2 databases behind the scenes as we are moving through our APQP document creation, and as we are making that information available for the inspection plans. What we are able to do is have the control plan generate information for the SPC, and this is what this is addressing, is that the redundancy of the data entry that might be opening the door to possible mistakes. So for instance, if I'm sitting on the control plan studio and generating a document for my control plan, the same information that I'm generating for that is also going to be entered into my SPC. What this allows for is, with this integration, is for us to eliminate that, because the information will be a transfer between the two. And then let's suppose that we have an engineering change. Instead of us having to go to 2 different locations or 2 different software formats, or utility screens, you can go into the Quality Planning Studio update the specifications for that engineering change, and then have that information downstream into the DataMetrics and the necessary SBC information as well. So if you are having some auditor findings because the control plan specifications don't always necessarily match the data that's being collected, or if there's a disconnect between the quality document and the plant floor information that's being generated, this will address that, because we are eliminating the redundancy of entering that information multiple times. We want to make life easier for you by having a bridge connected between the two databases and have that information shared between the two. So if you're not getting feedback from the production floor on a timely basis coming back into the Quality Planning Studio, we now have the ability to view that information coming from what would be the SBC, the CPK metrics, come back from the production floor to the quality planning with the push of the button. So it's bi-directional, it's two-way. It's kind of a handshaking of data between two databases, and we want to just kind of walk you through what's happening with that. So what exactly does the integration do? We're going to be sharing several fields of information between the Quality Planning Studio database and the DataMetrics database. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be actually in the software, but I do want to show you a couple of the different screens so that those of you who are already familiar with either one product or the other, or both, can just have a general idea as to how this, how this integration is going to work. So what I'm first going to do is move into the version of Quality Planning Studio, which is 8.3, and begin to talk about this movement from the Quality Planning Studio to the DataMetrics. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all of the specifications. You will have a choice as to which of the parts and the characteristics that you wish to, what we're calling, publish and synchronize between QPS and DataMetrics. So you will have a pick list of information, not necessarily the entire control plan, but you will be able to pull that information out of your control plan, generate which items, which characteristics you wish to publish, and then have that information sent into and synchronized with the DataMetrics database with a simple button click. We have a screen here, as you can see, for the nominal, the lower, the upper spec limits, the resolution, and the subgroup size. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you first, there's the publish, then we might have a synchronization of the specs. And what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through a few of the screenshots of how we get to that point, because this is a new feature in the Quality Planning Studio. So let's take a look first at the Quality Planning Studio, and I'm going to start as if you were to open up the software to what we call the project list. And so those of you who are brand new to this particular product, this is the Quality Planning Studio project list. I might have a number of projects in my database that I'm able to use. The example that I'm going to use for today is going to be this bearing ring pair. I'm responsible for generating documentation for that particular part, and as part of the requirements for my customer, I'm generating documentation in the form of perhaps a process flow chart, control plan, or process failure modes and effects analysis document. And what the Quality Planning Studio does is group that information and allow me to generate a project that will then pull that information together and send it on to my customer. This is what the main screen looks like for the Quality Planning Studio. You'll see a series of process steps on this screen, and you'll see over on the right side the different documents that the software can generate. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about all of those today, but what I do want to focus in on is the part family, because that is where we get to have our opportunity to join that information together and have that information selected and sent over to the SBC solution. So on this particular screen here, I've got in the part family, I've got a specific part, and that part will have two characteristics in this case, and I'm allowing these two characteristics to come into play. I'm going to single out this one here, this diameter that I'm going to pull out, this characteristic 001 that I'm pulling from this particular part in the part family. The reason that we decided to go with the part family to generate this information is because we have a number of our users that like to have a more generic control plan at what we call the parent level. So when we get into the specific information,
Excuse me, Chris. We have a little technical glitch here. All of us just have this poll, a wonderful poll going up there, but we can't see what you have. Give us a minute. Oh, now we got it. We're good.
Gotcha.
So you might want to backtrack just a wee bit. This is Vicki, by the way, folks. Hello.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki. So just wanted to talk about moving from the project list into the main screen. And from the main screen, we go into the part family. And within the part family, we call out one or two characteristics or however many characteristics we wish to set up the integration for. And what I'm going to do is just kind of pick out this one here, this outer diameter. Here it is in the part family. What I'm also going to do is have an excerpt of the control plan as we generate the documentation from the Quality Planning Studio. You'll see that I have this specification on my control plan for the tolerance or the target with the upper and lower tolerances or the upper and lower spec limits. What we're going to do is we're going to send that information down to our DataMetrics setup editor, and the way I'm going to do it is back in the software on our main screen, I'm going to go up to our DataMetrics synchronization or DataMetrics sync for short, and this will take me to a screen where I am again able to publish and synchronize these parts and characteristics between our two software solutions. So as I'm publishing the information, I wouldn't necessarily have to pull in the entire control plan. I'm just going to pick those characteristics that I would need for SBC data collection. And then by putting a check mark here, I'm going to publish the information, get the information ready to be synchronized and synchronize those specifications. And as long as I have a handshaking with the setup editor in the DataMetrics software, I will receive an OK status for my specifications. So what I'm going to do now is take a step outside of the Quality Planning Studio, and let's take a look at our DataMetrics software and see what's happening in that database. So my next screen here is going to be the setup editor for our DataMetrics, and you'll see that just by using that synchronization button back in Quality Planning Studio, I would have created the part and those two characteristics that I had selected with the check mark. I published and then synchronized, and then that brings in the information to the setup editor, allowing me to have the two characteristics as well as the fields of information that we generated from our target and upper spec, lower spec information. So I don't have to re-enter this information in our setup editor. This information would have been handshaked with the same database for DataMetrics that we have with Quality Planning Studio. So I would set up that information, I would come to Setup Editor, and this information would be waiting there for me. I would still go through a couple more steps here in the Setup Editor to allow this part to be configured for my data collection. And the one screen that I've used for our data collection is our DC Pro software. Now, I realize that some of you that are watching from today for the webinar are actually from, say, Nestle, where we use DC Advanced instead of DC Pro. So I'm just using this as an example for now, the DC Pro for data collection. And I see that we've got a couple other users with our portable collectors. So the setup editor will take this information and then guide it to either your mobile or station collectors, depending on whichever configuration you have for your facility. So here's that same outer diameter now being now with a screenshot from our DC Pro. The operators on the floor would then go through and collect the data, have that information be brought into the DataMetrics database. As the control plan would state, maybe 1 part per hour, or 100%, or whatever the control plan is calling for can be generated here in the DC Pro. And one thing that I'm not showing is the ability of the work instructions to be accessed as well. But if those of you who are familiar with our DC Pro software, simply hitting the F9 key for instructions, we can generate the control plan or the work instructions coming from the Quality Planning Studio if we so desire. So we collect our data here in DC Pro, and then we allow that information to be used in our analysis and reporting. And as we're using the information in the analysis and reporting, we'll be able to see the information that we're collecting. We also have another report that shows the histogram, and here's the information where we might be generating the CPK information, whatever information we would be generating as a result of our histogram. This information is not only available in our analysis and reporting tool, but also available back in Quality Planning Studio. So I'm taking you back to Quality Planning Studio now, and the information from DataMetrics is now being handshaked back to the QPS 8.3 version. So I now have the ability to, first of all, go from my main screen and synchronize into my DataMetrics Sync interface. And from here, I'm going to then have the information brought in from the DataMetrics database by selecting the Get Stats button up at the top. And then by doing that, once I have the information in, you'll see that we have a flag there for stats. Stats status is success. And so you can see here that we have that information being brought back from the DataMetrics software, being brought into the Quality Planning Studio software, and have that information now available for a quality engineer who is in the Quality Planning Studio solution, as opposed to going back and forth to the analysis and reporting module of our DataMetrics. So the information is immediate. We come into the synchronization screen. We go to the part that we are looking for the information for, and click on Get Stats and pull that information in, and we'll have our success for uniting and handshaking that information from the two databases. So quickly and easily, we get that process capability, those process capability statistics from DataMetrics coming back into QPS, and we could get that as often as we needed with the button click. So here are some of the different statistics that we would set up previously in the DataMetrics software, and then depending on whether we are using the set or the estimated settings, that will pull that information back into QPS. That information coming into QPS can be specified with our target values, which will then enable the different CPK alarms that we could have in DataMetrics, and we can also specify the different sigma values that we need for the statistic calculations. And then another area that we are allowing for is this look back period, which allows you to control from Quality Planning Studio how far back you wish to look at your statistics. So you can pick previous day, previous week. That information can be defined by the user in the Quality Planning Studio. So a number of options there that we can use to basically pull that information from our DataMetrics analysis or reporting tool. Essentially, we're pulling that information back into Quality Planning Studio. The benefits of this integration, as I've kind of walked through, you can see that the work instructions, the inspection planning, that information is already coming from the control plan. So the redundancy of data entry multiple times has been eliminated. We're not completely sharing the entire database. So the information that we have can be pulled in just from the control plan if we need to, just those parts and those characteristics that we choose in Quality Planning Studio. So as we set that up, we control what information is going to be sent down into the inspection plan software, into the setup editor. And then from there, we don't have to go back and forth between the two applications. We can send the information down into the setup editor and have it waiting there for us in terms of configuration for the different collectors that we might have. It also allows us to reduce the time that it takes to create the structure in DataMetrics. If we have an update to a control plan, if we have information from our customer that requires engineering changes, we have the ability to basically have a one point of update in the Quality Planning Studio and have that information updated, and then we would go back to the synchronization screen and update that information, and we would still have the choice as to whether we want to publish and synchronize that information downstream to the DataMetrics. So it's entirely possible that we might maybe have a delay in time of when we want the update to be carried forward down to DataMetrics, but we can manage that as well. So it doesn't have to be an immediate synchronization. We can begin the process of updating the control plan and then perhaps have a delay when we know that the new control plan is going to be generated. That allows us to get that capability monitoring for the control plan, coming back for the control plan into the Quality Planning Studio. And that also allows us to maintain the version control between our DataMetrics and our Quality Planning Studio. So the control plan might not yet be released. We can manage when we move that control plan to its next version, and then at the same time that we are generating that new release of the control plan, we can then go in and synchronize the update going into the DataMetrics, and so we have essentially that one point of entry where the control plan is generated and the information, the specifications, are then updated down to DataMetrics. So again, having that information taken care of in one screen, talking, bridging, integrating, handshaking, whichever term you would like to use for having two databases in the background, sharing information that allows you to take care of that information as we go forward. So this is one of the strategies that we at Datamite have been using, not just for these two products, but we're also looking at, we also have other instances where this information is being addressed. For instance, the gauge library. That is one of the next areas that we are looking at for bringing information in from our gauge and tool management software, and have that information also integrate with the gauge library in the Quality Planning Studio. So you can see that we don't need to have a database one large database. We have multiple databases for our different solutions, but now we have the ability to bridge the information between the different data silos or databases and have that information shared and controlled between the different solutions. So at this time, I'm opening up the floor for any questions, any comments. We've kind of walked you through the software. What we would welcome from those of you who are interested in a more detailed walkthrough of either or both software products, of having you contact us and letting us know if you'd be interested in having a follow-up conversation. And at this time, I'll open the floor to Vicki and Melissa to see if we have any questions.
Well, thank you, Chris. Well done. We do have the most popular question at this moment is that can the current upgrade be sent to users right now? And we're delighted to say that yes, it is available for SMA users, and just contact your sales representative or customer service requesting that link, and we will be able to send that to you. Now, if you can't get a download link because your system does not allow it, we can also send it as a memory stick. You just have to include that in your request. Okay,
definitely.
Chris?
And I know that I've been talking with a number of our users that have had recent software maintenance agreement updates because we've been walking them through some of the new versions here. So there should be a number of people with valid software maintenance agreements that can take advantage of getting this 8.3 version currently, because the software maintenance agreements usually last for about a year. So if we've recently upgraded in the past year, we've been making this release available, but we may not always have the proper contact person at your facility to get that release information to. So again, as Vicki has mentioned, we can get it to you, and you can get to the latest version of whichever product you're on.
Just a follow-up question that we've also received here is, what version of QPS and DataMetrics do I need to use in order to get this integration? And the answer to that one, QPS 8.3 or our new 8.4 release will both have the two-way, and our DataMetrics release of 2019 R1 or newer has the two-way communication. The earlier version would receive the characteristics but could not send back the capability. If you have an existing SMA and you have one of these products, getting the upgrade will allow you to upgrade your databases and your applications so that you can take advantage of this integration.
Okay. And do we have any questions, any comments?
We have another question.
Okay.
Could you review for us, Chris? Please describe the bi-direction option of QPS to DataMetrics and how I confirm the changes are active in DataMetrics.
As we walk, this would be a great opportunity for a more in-depth conversation and presentation. So I ask that whoever has requested that, we would be happy to walk you through using the actual software. Today we just kind of used screenshots, but I would be more than happy to spend some time with the particular users that would need a more in-depth conversation to show how that would work.
Chris, we're going to do a quick poll here. So folks, you're going to get your polling screen, and we'll just keep it up for a few seconds here so that we can get you back to the communication screen. This is Vicki, by the way. All right. Do you want to share? All right. One more poll.
Did you have one?
Yeah. So those of you who would like to meet with either Chris or one of Vicki or my peers, Bob or Diane, to discuss a little bit more about how to deploy or upgrade your databases, let us know and we can be in touch with you. Right. Are there any more questions? If you have a question, go ahead and send it through the question window.
Vicki, one question that I've had come up a couple of times in the individual presentations would be, how can I get to that database for DataMetrics? In other words, do we have to have the software loaded on the same machine? And the answer to that is no. You might have, one database server that is unique for the Quality Planning Studio, and then another database server in another facility or in another production location. We will walk you through the steps that you need to take to handshake that information, so the databases don't have to physically be in the same building, to have that information happen. So we can map to sort of the second database. If you have the Quality Planning Studio, we can map to that DataMetrics database separately. They do not have to be necessarily in the same facility or on the same server.
And Chris, because all of our systems use licensing, we can use the same license service and just add it. So instead of having to have one per product, you have one licensed service and all of our products can talk to that.
Correct. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point, that the licensing service is an umbrella for all of the products all of the solutions that we have at DataMite. And these two would fall under that same licensing service. So again, Vicki, you might have just DataMetrics on your machine, and I just have Quality Planning Studio on my machine. We can access that information through the service that we would use to talk back and forth. So the same license service would be used for both your machine and my machine at the same time.
All right. If we don't, I don't see any more questions. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today and learning more about this integration between Quality Planning Studio and DataMetrics. And I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Thank you very much to Chris and to Vicki for their help in presenting and answering questions today.